In the Sonic community, you're going to see a lot of different answers on what someone's favorite game in this entire franchise personally is. But if I had to choose out of the many games, I would say Sonic Unleashed sticks with me the most and is my personal favorite out of all of the Sonic games. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why I love this game so much. It's not just my favorite Sonic game, it's easily in my top 10 video games of all time. Instead of describing the plot in excruciating detail, because I don't feel like I can add anything that hasn't already been said about this wonderful game, and its story that definitely carries the experience. There are better YouTubers out there that can go into the plot details more than I can, like for example Channel Pup. But to give a synopsis, Sonic is trying to stop Dr. Eggman because he is definitely up to no good as usual. And what ends up happening is Eggman gets the upper hand on Sonic this time and ends up transforming him into a werewolf, or a werehog, a werewolf hedgehog. And then he also, on top of that, unleashes a evil that is hidden beneath the Earth's core. And this beast that comes out of the Earth's core and starts to split the planet apart is known as Dark Gaia, which is essentially the Satan of the Sonic universe. Eventually, Sonic meets up with a new character known as Chip, who has amnesia, and it is up to him and Chip to go around the world collecting the 7 Chaos Emeralds to stop Eggman and defeat Dark Gaia. Another reason I absolutely adore this game's story, and just the game in general, is because this was one of the last performances that Jason Griffith gave as Sonic, and out of all of the main Sonic voice actors, Jason is my favorite, because I think he gives the best portrayal of this character. But with that out of the way, let's get into the real meat and potatoes of this video and discuss the gameplay. The thing that most people think of when talking about this game are the day stages, so let's talk about those first. During the daytime, the player is required to get Sonic from point A to point B at lightning fast speeds, and a lot of the challenge comes from pure muscle memory and reaction timing. And these levels are some of the best gameplay the Sonic series has ever had, mainly because of the way Sonic controls. I don't want to sound like an IGN reviewer, but it really does make you feel like Sonic, going for these levels at blistering fast speeds and breaking through everything in your path. It's a real power fantasy and it feels great. Another thing I really like about the day stages is that they encourage you to play your absolute best as to get the best ranking at the end of the level, that being S, A, B, D, and E. E being the worst and you absolutely suck and you need to get good, and S showing that you have mastered this level and truly understand how this game works. And I must say, it's quite satisfying being rewarded for all your hard work for taking the time to master these levels and truly understand this game's mechanics. Next, I want to talk about the hub worlds. Throughout your adventure, you're going to have to traverse these hub worlds. Now, these are usually used to get to the next level, but they also have a lot of fun world building in my opinion. For example, you can buy a ton of interesting items at the shop vendors at each of these hub worlds, as well as being able to talk to a lot of very interesting NPC characters, and most of the time they'll have something interesting to say to Sonic. Next, let's talk about a thing that people can't seem to agree on, that being the night stages. During the night, the player has to use Sonic's werehog form to get from point A to point B, which is much more slower and focuses more on combat and platforming instead of speed and spectacle like the day stages. And a lot of people really hate the night stages because they claim that they're too long and break up the pace of the game, but I actually really like the werehog. I think that the combat is really fun to use, and it kind of reminds me of Bayonetta and God of War, but on a much lower budget. And if you're complaining about the length of these levels, that's really only applicable if you're looking for the Sun and Moon medals, which are required to get to the end of the game. If you're not looking for these medals, these levels are much faster to get through. And even though the platforming can be challenging, I actually think it shares a lot in common with the very first Sonic game's philosophy on platforming, being that you need to master the level in order to get through it more effectively. And personally, I think the difficulty of Unleashed is challenging, but in a good way. Plus, it feels incredibly gratifying to use all these different combos and stringing them together, and using Sonic's new abilities to defeat the enemies in your path. Also, I just love the fact that when Sonic becomes a werewolf, he just becomes Mr. Fantastic. I think that's really funny. Overall, I really enjoy the Werehog's gameplay. Despite it being very janky and not always functional, I think that the Werehog offers something that nothing else in the Sonic series really has, and I love how different it is from everything else we've ever gotten. Instead of giving the soundtrack of this game its own section, I'm just going to talk about it briefly right now. I think the Sonic Unleashed soundtrack is the best Sonic soundtrack of all time. I love every single song from this game, and I'm absolutely obsessed with this soundtrack. I think it's one of the many things that really makes this game so special for me. To me, another reason why I think Sonic Unleashed is my favorite Sonic game is because it was the last time that Sega really put a AAA budget and effort into one of their games. I mean, if you look at the graphics of this game, they look beautiful, even today. I mean, this game came out in 2008, and it looks better than most of the AAA games that come out nowadays, especially their own. Sonic Unleashed, despite having flaws, remains to be my favorite Sonic game of all time, and I think we should start remembering this game more fondly rather than negatively. But let me know what y'all think of Sonic Unleashed in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your different opinions on this game, and I'll see you in my next big project.